Well, welcome once again to Full Flap TV. As I say, it's constantly developing this show as we try to sort of get a new format and try and find a new way of getting things back on air again. I'm Richard Midson, I'm a PPL IMC, and with me today is Emil Neusen, who is a commercial pilot, although we're not actually going to say who he's working for, but you might be able to spot maybe from some of the photos a little bit later on. But he joins me now, and I'm delighted to have him with me today because we've been chatting for about 20 minutes already, actually, just about all sorts of things. Do you want to say hello, Emil?
Hello, Richard, and hello to everybody else watching. Thank you for having me on your new show.
Not at all. It's absolutely fantastic to have you. It's great because we're trying to cover a lot more stuff. In the past, it was very much focused in on sort of general aviation, and it's nice to now get people like yourself on talking about more the sort of commercial sphere. Now, I want to talk to you a bit in a moment about the handling of an A3. It's an A330, isn't it? You're really flying at the moment.
Right now, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but first of all, I want to talk to you a bit about what you think it takes to be an airline pilot. What do you think is important for the character of the kind of person? I mean, you're obviously analysing yourself here, but what would you say is important?
Yeah, of course you analyze yourself. Because everybody has a bit of an idea, although the general consensus between, at least that's what I think, between my colleagues is someone who, under stress as well, but in general as well, can be a very good people manager and systems manager, can keep overview. Yeah, the teamwork part is very important. Everybody thinks, oh, you have to be, very good in your steering skills, but the whole flying bit, especially on an Airbus, that's more the routine stuff. If you want to get out of an emergency properly, you just have to be able to use your resources around you to be able to work very well together. That's the most important thing. But even in just general, everyday airline flying where nothing goes wrong, in order to prevent stuff going wrong, you're spending a lot of hours in a metal tube, with your colleagues and with passengers, and you see the same qualities then are to cope with people, basically.
Because one of the things, it struck me about the the crash landing in the Hudson was the fact that here you are flying around on a day-to-day basis, going through all the procedures and going through all the standard checklists, and all of a sudden, in that instant, you've got to think more on your feet, haven't you? And you've got to be that kind of person that can do that.
And there is no simulator that can really train that. No. You're always aware that it's a simulator. And it's a bit like a game that you're in, and I read about accidents, all the time, also aircraft investigations, and you see stuff going wrong, and sitting at home on the sofa, in hindsight, it's always like, oh, that's so stupid. Why the hell didn't they see that?
Yeah, yes.
Now and then you have these stressful things in the simulator, and you think, why on earth did I do that?
Yeah.
Because we're all humans, and that's also very important about the airline thing. And our training department also constantly emphasizes that you're human. You make mistakes. You try to help each other out because it's going to happen. It's not like you're trying to make as little as possible, but you're going to make it. And to show your own weaknesses, like I'm not sure, I've never been to this airport. Am I understanding this system correctly? You're constantly opening up yourself and keeping the dialogue open, because the airplanes and operation is constantly complex. You're always learning new stuff, and if you're saying like, well, I'm so experienced, I really know what I'm doing, then you don't know what you're doing. That's basically.
So if you've got someone at the moment, and I know a lot of people watching this show are people that would like to become commercial airline pilots, what sort of things have they got to say to themselves to see whether they really are cut out for that kind of role?
Well, for them, even a regular flight in, like, for instance, a small airplane or a simulator, you already pick out some features that are important. I've in my general aviation flying, I've taken along a lot of people, and a lot of them also wanted to become pilots. Like, well, come along, I'll tell you some stuff. We'll go flying, tell you some basics. Some of them, most of them, never really flew themselves, and you take your time and try to make them feel at ease. But you still see people constantly, even though you try to be relaxed and you take over stuff, but some just don't cut it. They freeze up, they block, they're very nervous, and then maybe I'm making them nervous. They're thinking, oh, wow, there's this airline pilot sitting next to me, have to perform or something like that. It's very human. So you try and filter like, okay, what's blocking them. But for some people, even or in the beginning, they're not really cut out for this. They constantly either they're focusing on one single task, trying to really do that properly, and meanwhile forgetting all about the rest. Trying to keep their pitch, but meanwhile they're rolling, and they're not. Focusing your attention on the right stuff and dividing it and putting your priorities where they're supposed to be at the time.
I have to say, well, one of the things I found really hard, actually, because I did an IMC, which is a sort of private pilots limited thing, which is just for the UK only. Oh, yeah. And getting used to watching those instruments and flying straight and level without any kind of autopilot is a real challenge at first. I think you just don't know where to look.
It's the hardest thing, I think, is flying single engine piston solo IMC IFR non-autopilot.
I'm glad you said that. That makes me feel better now.
Yeah, I dare to say that is even really dangerous.
Oh, great.
But yeah, I remember for my training, and I flew IFR by always, and you probably also as well, take someone along, even doesn't have to be a pilot, but someone who can take the controls at least and scan my instruments. Like, okay, I gotta get a checklist, gotta get a look on the map, get on the radio, get in the manual because something is broke. You need a resource like that, or you can't survive on your own. It's too hard. It's too.
Let's ask you about you. How did you get to become a pilot? What was your stage? What was the first moment that you thought, I want to do it? And then, sort of very briefly, how did it happen?
Didn't know anything else. Just didn't know. It was my word. My first word was vliegtuig, which is not a word actually, but it's me trying to pronounce vliegtuig, which is the Dutch word for airplane.
Right.
And my father worked for the airline I'm flying for.
Mm-hmm. Whoever that may be, yeah. I have no idea.
No. But not as a pilot. But we always used to go to the hangar, look at the airplanes and stuff like that. I'm sure you know it's a virus. Yeah. And once you get it, you can't let go of it. And I couldn't let go of it, so I even did a test at school. Like, okay, I only want to be a pilot. But what if stuff doesn't work out? What the hell do I do? So I filled in all day, filled in the questions, and the day after the result came in, like, yeah, you only want to become a pilot.
So and then how did you actually get into the job?
With a lot of determination, a lot of luck, and a very well. In the end, it was nice timing. I found out too late that it's very important if airlines are hiring and if you get through the selection. Because some people think, oh, I passed the flight school selection test. That means I'm in.
Yeah.
But they're peanuts in comparison to what you're going to get. And every school will let you finish the training because you're paying for it. And then afterwards, they think, well, I'll just apply now for any airline and I'll be in. But airlines only hire from specific schools, and even then, you still have to do a very tough selection. And even if you're through, you have to, only then will you really find out, like, okay, maybe I can fly a single-engine IFR airplane, but I'm not cut out to fly a really complex, high-performance jet aircraft in a multi-crew environment, which asks of other skills. Much more human skills, which can be very important for general aviation as well.
So, do you have one particular thing that you learnt from that whole experience of becoming a pilot that you could pass on to other people and sort of say, look, whatever you do this?
Yeah, for me, I have my excuse because I did the wrong school, but in the end, I ended up at a proper, decent airline. But right now, people don't have the excuse like, oh, well, I didn't know. They said it was okay, and airlines were hiring, and Boeing says they're going to need hundreds and thousands of pilots, But that's Boeing talking to stockholders. And they're going to hire, but they're going to hire in China, and they're not hiring English people, except maybe when you've been flying 747s for 30 years, then they'd like to have you. But if you're just out of school and you just did, your average flight school, or you did it modular on your own, There's no airline that really wants to hire you. They got their lines already. But that's what I would say. My biggest tip is prepare and dig yourself in online properly. There is a Dutch forum on airwork.nl for the Dutch viewers, and I know Prune, but that's um, the English equivalent, but it's a very hard forum to get.
There's forums around the world, yeah.
There's enough, but you'll find out that it's a very tough world. There's banks and flight schools that trying really to make money on people in every way possible. And you're going to be left maybe with a license, but also with a very high debt and a very large risk, because there's a very small chance that you're going to get hired somewhere. And if you get hired somewhere, there's a very big chance that you'll have to pay another, don't know what the pound rate is, but let's say £30,000 for a type rating. And then maybe finally you're in with a debt of 150 or 200,000 euros. And just managing the interest on its own is very hard. And people think of this glamorous lifestyle sometimes.
So you're saying that the key thing is to do your research, know which schools are feeding, and then look for the airlines who are likely to take you from where you are. I mean, half of our audience are in America as well, so there's obviously a lot of domestic airlines over there as well.
Yeah, well, in the US it really depends on the country, on the schools, on the culture, on the times. In the US, I think most people. I mean, if you don't know it and you really haven't done any research in the US, but I mean, people there, if you want to start on a commuter, that's a big problem now. You need 1,500 hours total anyway. Mm. Nobody can get it. You can't even pay for that. So you have to be rich at the start already. But let's say you get 1,500 hours somewhere doing instruction or so, then you start with a commuter, and those commuters, they don't look at your debt, but they pay you as much or less than a bus driver in New York. You know, I know of these stories of people having bunk beds, sharing rooms near airports, or even staying in campers on parking lots at airports, or just flying across the country, jump seating there. It's yeah, I would advise against it really, or at least if you have to be really nuts about flying to do it. Yeah. Really very nuts, not just to survive the whole ordeal after your flight school and finding out like, oh wait, it's really hard to get through selections and be patient and train for selections, because it can be very demotivating. And once you're in, then you'll find out like, oh, it isn't this glamorous lifestyle. It can be for some airlines, but there's a lot of low-cost airlines that try to get the most from their money, logically, of course.
But I mean, you say about that though. Just tell us very quickly about what you were telling us about Angola.
Oh yeah, well, last week I was in Angola for the first time at a night stop there, and I'm very lucky to be in the airline which still has that relatively luxurious lifestyle. So I spent 8.5 hours sitting in my sheep wool seat, chatting with stewardesses that come in now and then, that feed me all kinds of very nice business class stuff if they have it left. And then after 8.5 hours, you disconnect the autopilot and you do a little bit of that Top Gun stuff. And then the taxiing is usually the hardest part. And then you're there in the hotel, and then I had to stay there for about 5 days. And you're getting paid by the company. And you get free hotel, free breakfast, and you get a lot of daily allowance. A lot, because it's the most expensive city in the world.
Yeah, go on, tell us again how much that burger cost.
I got around $900 just for staying for 5 days there. But you have to remember, at least if you're staying in a hotel and having and you didn't bring anything along, which most crew do, the cheeseburger and the pineapple juice I had together was $30.
It's incredible, isn't it?
But I think I spent about a third of my daily allowance. We also have to remember, it can be glamorous, but a lot of airlines are not allowed to leave their hotels there. You're strictly forbidden to hire a car anyway because of the landmines. But it can be very dangerous to leave the hotel. And the only thing we were allowed to really, if we were allowed to leave the hotel, it was only in a group and only in daytime and not too far away. And there was one thing, and that was very nice. We were allowed to take a hotel shuttle bus that would bring us to the beach. Had a very nice beach tent. So